Welcome, and in this video we're going to be wood turning a monster can, or 2.5, for a monster of a diorama. So if you want to see how I did this, stay tuned till the end. This is a complicated build and took a long time, but I'm taking advice from viewers to concentrate on the things that I want to build, and it fits nicely with personal changes that will slow down the production of this channel, but will tend to focus more on the elaborate projects. This is, after all, a hobby venture, as my focus is really on my family and running a woodworking charity that helps vulnerable and marginalised adults back to work. So thank you for your patience, and if you enjoy these videos, I hope you will like and subscribe and hit that bell notification. Please also consider supporting this channel by becoming a Patreon member, like Annette Hawkins, who has been a wonderful and encouraging supporter. Oh, and as always, comment in the section below, let me know what you think of this project. I 3D printed the logos and letters for the monster can. I cast them into silicone and then resin filled. You can still use a pressure pot for epoxy resin casting in silicone. Here, the design advice is that the smaller pieces are actually difficult to cast in silicone, and if you're wanting a translucent finish and to let the light through, it's best to print them a little larger than the object that you are mimicking. The white letters were the case in point. They were overwhelmed by the surrounding resin of the can. Of course, I didn't realise that till after the wood turning, but by then I'd spent quite a few weeks on this project and I really didn't want to go right back to the beginning and start all over again. The layout on the wood turning column matches closely to the design of the standard size can. All I had to do was calculate the positions of the layout for the two other size cans before filling with epoxy resin. Using a powder in epoxy resin is fine, but as long as you have a thick cross section, otherwise it just looks grainy and particulate. This worked well for the largest monster can, but not so for the others after the wood turning. So a trick was to paint the inside of the can with a matching black colour, obviously avoiding the logos where the light's going to come through. Acrylic paints work wonders here, though it may take a few layers. If you are fed up with the leaks appearing in your expensive epoxy resin projects, then here's another trick. You can 3D print the resin molds using transparent PLA, though it's best to have quite a few layers and turn up the printing temperature. Oh, and you will need patience for printing something like this. It does take a long time, but it did save me some potentially massive headaches. The resin molds are sacrificial unless they're coated internally, but can be easily wood turned away. The approach to wood turning a can like this is the same I've used on previous projects, so please check out the Red Bull video, after watching this one of course. With the bottom can of the diorama completed, it's time to wood turn the other two layers. One positive aspect of wood turning cans is not having to worry about the bottom, and you can simply wood turn a cylinder. The smallest can did require a wooden column to fit onto the lathe in order to process the outside, because I didn't have a chuck small enough to expand into a mortise. One of my favourite things about wood turning epoxy resin are the streamers. It's like getting caked in silly string. I do find it curious that a small number of viewers ask me, what is the point of this type of project? Now, I would have thought it was self-evident, but if it's not, here's a list of reasons in no particular order. 1. I enjoy wood turning. 2. Mimicking real-life objects with resin, 3D printing and woodturning is a challenge. 3. It allows me to be creative. 4. It's often relaxing, especially the woodturning. 5. It keeps my mind active and engaged. 6. I get to interact with a lot of wonderful people around the world. 7. The projects are useful talking points when engaging the public about the charity that I manage. Of course there are more, but hopefully you'll begin to get the point. I had to learn how to use Blender rather quickly, and there are some great tutorials on YouTube that can help. Now, using my own hand as a reference, I created a claw as though clasping a cylindrical object. I wonder what object that would be. Now, it didn't have to be perfectly anatomically correct, but it did have to be spatially orientated correctly. And thankfully, using the slicing software, the 3D objects are easily scalable. Alas, my 3D printing skills still need a lot of refinement. I used a wood PLA filament for both claws and spent a little time sanding them smooth before base coating in white and then airbrushing. Again, this was a technique I've not done before and had to learn rather quickly. One piece of advice here was that a starter airbrush kit can achieve a lot of your aims for the beginner. I went for a dual action gun with a couple of different needle sizes, and then it was just playing around. Now, I already had a compressor, using it for the pressure pot. The technique may be ropey, but the finish was what I was after. The hardest part of any project like this is then to cut or drill into it, because there's just no going back. I'd only have to go right to the start if something went massively wrong. I wasn't sure of the best way to crack the lid of each can, and this step could have been a lot more refined, and so could have the electronics for the lighting system. I wanted each layer to light up, but of course didn't want the leads to show, so I had to keep everything internal, hence the drilling of the claws and the can. I made up a quick wooden base and cut a fake grass tile to fit the bottom can. It's rather a messy approach, trying to splice in a series of lighting strips, but I stuck to my glue guns and began the assembly, of course checking at each stage to ensure that the wires were still correctly connected. And now for a modification of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping on the grassy floor. Ensuring that each claw was aligned correctly, it did need a couple of pairs of hands and then a lot of patience in waiting for the hot glue to cool. But I managed to ensure that the leads and the can tops were in place before fixing everything into position. On reflection, I think I really could do with a Resin 3D printer, and potentially, depending on the performance of such a video like this, I may be able to do the investment soon. The completed diorama. Now I think the forearms for the claws needed to be longer, so that you can fully see the separation of each layer, which is more evident from the reverse. But once lit up, I really like the effect, say for a night light. Now of course I cannot sell this piece without permission from the copyright owners, but if you are insane enough, you could always build your own. So let me know what you think of this diorama in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like button, hammer that subscribe button, and sand and polish that bell notification. And also, please consider becoming a patron to this channel. Take care, and catch you next time.